Yo, what is up, anime fans? It's your boy, the Token Black Guy here. And with me is my co-host, Little Man Tech. And I just want to thank everyone for coming out to our very first installment of Anime Dashboard. Here we talk about everything and anything anime, from theories to debates to top tens. But if that sounds like a channel that's interesting to you, man, we hope you consider about liking and subscribing. But with that out of the way, we're going to be talking about which is the better series, GT or Super. But let's just jump right into it.
Dragon Ball Super is better than Dragon Ball GT in a number of different areas. One of which is its ability to allow us to explore different scenarios with the characters that we love using the multiverse. Um, so we can think whether we're looking at the Tournament of Power, Golden
Marvel did it
Frieza.
first.
Hmm?
Marvel did it first with the multiverse. I just want to throw that
Okay.
out there.
Um, so Basically, if we're looking at the Tournament of Power, we got to see different scenarios with each of the races that we've grown to appreciate over the lifespan of Dragon Ball Z. We got to see what would happen if Piccolo had more Namekians to absorb, because he's a hungry bitch. We got to see new Super Saiyans. We got to see different Frieza forms. I mean, all of this. And
That's actually a good point. I've always wondered what would happen if Piccolo, when he got to Namek, was just like, "Hey, I fused with Nail. Why don't I just fuse with a bunch of more people here?" And I
exactly.
guess you can say also that Frieza killed most of them before they got there because Vegeta, they were looking for the Dragon Balls. They kind of
But
like all torched them.
but
But that,
if
that that
you
was something I always thought of.
if you remember, there was one other Super Namek that we encountered, and it
Oh,
wasn't even
Lord
canon,
Slug.
Lord Slug.
Yeah.
And so that was the last time that we got to see a Super Namekian besides Piccolo. So getting just to see that, they didn't play a big role, but it was fulfilling just to see like, hey, this is what would happen. They still get their ass beat. I mean, Frieza beat these niggas in two different multiverses.
Piccolo said, "I'm gonna hit you with this Dende," and that's on Kami.
On comedy. um, but yeah, I think that that's one of the areas that it definitely beats GT. GT, we followed two characters that we had barely any experience with at the time. So we had Pan, who nobody knew anything about. She was literally just in GT and at the very end of Dragon Ball Z. And then we had
Don't you say
Future
Trunks?
Trunks. Yeah, but like,
Future Trunks was literally with us for the whole Android arc to the Cell arc. I don't want to hear nothing about he
but
wasn't with us.
but
Hey,
that's
you know him.
literally, but like that. So we got the like battle scarred, like immature Future Trunks. This was like peaceful, like I grew up in peacetime. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, Trunks. Like I
I
want that
will
like PTSD Trunks back.
I will succeed that that is an accurate
So
representation. We did get the sugar down Kool-Aid version of Trunks.
yeah, yeah. So I mean,
We got the Pedialyte Trunks.
so that's um, you know, recapping what we have so far is like we have the new scenarios with characters that we love. We have
Do we
characters.
love them though? Because I personally
Yeah.
think that a lot of the characters that they add in there, like the female Saiyans and the other ones, I mean, like how many of them are actually also very memorable?
I'm not saying those. I'm saying the characters that we've grown up loving. Like we got to see Piccolo, we got to see Vegeta, we got to see Goku in his like usual form. I'm not saying that there's not new characters that are included that we may or may not like as much as previous characters, but we did get to see our original cast. We even got to see Master Roshi do some shit.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I did like seeing Master Roshi finally be able to show what he can do and like why he was like such like an OP person like at that time. But I also feel like they could have done all of that in Dragon Ball Z as well. Like that would have been like there's tons of times like when this is also what pissed me off about Super. That's a good point. So remember when Master Roshi is sitting there, if he's this powerful, and I'm getting off on a tangent, but the meaning, the one of my problems with Super is that the power scaling. And again, Dragon Ball Z has never had good power scaling. I mean, we all know that. It's they just threw that shit out the window. They're like, I guess we'll make him this strong or this weak. RIP to Yamcha. But what they did is that they completely negate and retcon everything that it makes the Dragon Ball Z like unwatchable when you go back and look at it a second time. So, for instance, remember when Android 17 landed there and they're like, we're looking for the Goku, and they came with everybody. If Master Roshi was as strong as he was then, he wouldn't have been cowering when they all came to Kame House, and then Piccolo had to go over and fight 17 by himself right after he had fused with Yoshi. Was that strong that whole time, as much as the people he was fighting in the tournament power, which we all can agree would be several times, hundreds stronger than any of the people that were there at that time. Master Roshi would have been able to kill both of them in that exact moment. And at that point, they were all stronger than Goku, Vegeta, etc. So that means Master Roshi at that time would have been stronger than Goku, is what they basically would have been saying.
But they also explain that. I mean, you might not like the explanation, but they did explain that he had to give up his like pervy ways. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that's just because like it's 2022. Back then, it was like what Super came out in like 2018, something like that. 2019. I mean, obviously, it's just like his perviness couldn't exist in the modern age, which is what I'm getting at. But they did offer an explanation as to why he wasn't as strong back then.
So and that's another one. They take everybody's character, which is why I don't like Super, and they make them not what they're supposed to be. So why you destroyed years and years of character arcs to make Super, like for instance, like Master Roshi, his whole thing's perviness. You take that away, not really Master Roshi anymore. All right, now let's look at Vegeta. Vegeta's whole thing is pride. Vegeta's a very prideful person. How much times does he get bitched out by Beerus and other people? Like in one of the episodes, Vegeta's literally wearing an apron, cooking him food when Goku meets him in the other world. And Vegeta's like, oh no, like super afraid of Beerus and all this other stuff. And he's like, don't wake him. And he's doing that stuff. And he has him training, but he's got him like in an apron running around. Like Vegeta would have been like, I'm the Prince of Saiyan. Like that shit don't fly with me. Like I'm not wearing that stuff. Like, but it makes Vegeta look like a punk, and he's not prideful. That's not his whole thing. You might as well make Goku a genius. And like you might as well just start taking every single buddy's personalities that in like arcs that they made and just changing them, because that's what they did in Super. Also on the Master Roshi thing, and that's a terrible reason why they said that, oh, that's why he didn't do that, because he had to give up his perviness. So you're saying the fate of the world was at stake also at that time, because the androids were like literally killed everybody off. With these androids are gonna come, they're gonna like kill everybody, and this, that, and the world's gonna be over. Everyone's gonna be dead. It's only gonna be me and Gohan. So if it's as serious as they made it, and they said about Goku dying from the heart virus, if it's as serious as what he thought it was, don't you think that would have also been a moment to be like, well, let me give up my permanence so that I can like take these two out, and then we won't have that world. You know what I mean?
See,
Like there's so many problems with it.
But then what we're getting at is you disagree with the rationale that they gave. Not that there's no reason.
But that's what
not
Super.
That there's no reason. That's the distinction, is that like right there they have a reason for it. Now we can say
the reasonings behind those things are really terrible, and it makes the previous episode, the previous stuff of Dragon Ball Z, like it retcons it to where it doesn't make sense. It retcons Dragon Ball Z so much that so much stuff that they do later is like for 17, they're like, oh, 17 was actually alive and all this other stuff. And I'm like their explanations that they try to shoehorn people back in. Same thing with Frieza and how he's like he can turn basically Super Saiyan now. I'm like all of these things. There's so many instances where like, let's bring this guy back and let's bring this guy. So much times I feel like that just shits on the continuity of Dragon Ball Z. Like,
but okay,
for real, how much better was Dragon Ball Z when death actually meant something? Back when, like in Dragon Ball, when like Krillin and them died, and they were like, oh man, like you only can bring someone back one time, and it was like meaningful. Now you can die left and right, and they're like, well, we'll bring them back somehow with the loophole of this, and that. You know what I mean? Now it just doesn't matter.
See, that's a fair argument, but that's consistent in the whole show. Is that there are situations,
the consistency of the show.
It's not retconning. It's not retconning if you have a rationale as to why it couldn't happen before. So that whole like, oh, if they only did this difference, then yada yada wouldn't happen. I mean, you could say that for like any anime. It's like, oh, if we go to Yu Yu Hakusho, maybe some folks have seen that as well. The whole idea that like oh, if Kuwabara died, that Urameshi could access this untold power. Or better yet, when he gets his dad's power up, it's like he's close to death. Taguro was beating that ass. He was beating that ass. But then what did they say? They said he wasn't strong enough to have the power of Ryzen in him yet. That's the same situation. It's like you might not like the explanation, but there is an explanation. It does allow for like why that couldn't happen before. And on top of that,
The terrible explanation doesn't justify the means.
but it
Like,
it it's a different argument than like, oh, it retcons, because a retcon is literally just like defeats the entire thing without an explanation, and that's
it kind of does. It works in the same concept. Like I understand what you're saying. Like it does have an explanation, but at what point as a storyteller can you just give out shitty explanations and just be like, well, I gave you guys an explanation. It's not my fault if you don't agree with it. That doesn't change the fact that it's not bad, that it affects the previous. If I make a movie and then in the sequel, I crap on a bunch of stuff that happened in the previous movie, but I give you an explanation. It does not make that second movie any better.
okay. That's fair. But what I would argue to that is if that happens, right? And we can address that, we realize it, we see it when it happens. But if we have a third movie and it does the same thing to the second movie, we can't arbitrarily say like, oh, this is the problem with the third movie. It's been a consistent problem. Like you said, Dragon Ball used to have a serious tone of when somebody died, you felt it. That wasn't an issue with Dragon Ball Z. Again, with the Super Saiyan transformation, that was a huge deal when Goku did it, and then it progressively lost importance up until like Goten can do it, like back when Goku was getting his ass beat by King Piccolo. I mean, where would the story be if that was allowed to happen? Yes, they gave an explanation for it, somewhat. It was bullshit, but they did give an explanation. And so
Another
that's you can't arbitrarily set that after the fact and then be like super sucks because it changes the meaning behind the earlier show when Dragon Ball Z did the exact same thing to Dragon Ball.
Now, another thing that I have a problem with Dragon Ball Z Super. Now, the one saving grace now of Dragon Ball Z Super is that people always say, well, this it looks better, it's more sleek, which I think is very debatable. Again, that is style versus preference. So I'm gonna leave that to side. But one of its only saving grace is literally its action scenes, which they were like, and again, Dragon Ball Z Super obviously came out in a newer time. They had better technology. They can make the animation look a lot more sleek. The fighting scenes a lot more better and things like that. And we all know the old school Dragon Ball Z ones. They were just like a lot of yelling and just different. They took a lot of shortcuts and a lot of liberties to make those fight scenes. Maybe not as animated, but like it's the fight scenes they're talking about. They're like, oh well, look at all the fights with Hit and Jaren, and like they're so beautiful and they're like really good. I mean, which is fair, but I feel like everything to get up to that, like I can't tell you how many times someone's told me that they're like, oh dude, Dragon Ball Z Super so good. Just wait till you get to the Tournament of Power. I'm like, isn't that like seven? Like, isn't that like 80 episodes in?
Okay, so I can agree with that. I mean, there is a slow build up. Yes, you had Beerus in the first couple of episodes, and that was interesting at first. But to be honest, I think like in hindsight, that wasn't that big of an impact. At the time, I remember everybody talking about it like, oh my God, we get to see Goku again. He's fighting this new god of destruction. There's all this like intrigue. But like in hindsight, yeah. Um, but that actually brings me to another point, and that is that the movies are better in Dragon Ball Super than they are in GT. So
Oh, I mean, yeah, I'll give you that. That's true. Yes.
um, yeah,
But again, that comes down to like just the fight scenes. Like you have more money for animation and things like that, and they have like
it's not
better
about
animation.
it's not about just the fight scene, because in terms of the story was more interesting. I loved the baby movie. That was a great movie for GT, but I'm not gonna lie, like looking back, the whole franchise has had terrible movies. I can't remember. There's hardly any that I think objectively are good movies. But
You
the Broly movie was fantastic. And it fixed a serious issue. Is that like, okay, we have this super strong character we never see again. We see a transformation that everybody loved and that had an awful explanation about it. Now we have a really cool design, a recurring character that we've grown up with, and a story that's actually relatable. After Baby, that was the highlight of GT. It was that, the whole Baby Vegeta arc.
I mean, I must say they had Goku. They had that movie, Goku Junior versus Goku, Vegeta one, Junior. You've seen that one?
Oh yeah, that was awful though.
I like.
Trash.
But I feel like the story in GT is just better in the sense of like it just flows more. Now again, the baby go. I understand, and this is what I feel like would rub people the wrong way about GTs because like no one wanted to see Goku back to a kid. I will admit that. I'm not sitting here saying GT is perfect by any means. I personally am not the biggest GT fan. I would just say I would take GT over Super any day in the sense of just GT versus Super, and those are those reasons. So I mean, like. Was like it flowed, whereas Super does not feel like it flows. It just feels like they're just cramming stuff in there. And let's be honest, Akira Toriyama, we all know he brought that out because the fandom for Dragon Ball Z is so like big and so like diehard fans that they will watch anything that they put on there just because. And people when they saw GT, they all flocked to it because they were like, it's a new Dragon Ball Z. Like I want to see it. I mean, I do feel like Super definitely has some redeeming qualities. It definitely has better movies. It definitely has really good animation and some fight scenes. But like chronologically, from the stories to just how they handle things, I also am not a fan of. So one thing that they do is Vegeta is the princess. Like he's been training since he was small. Like he knows how to fight. Goku's a Saiyan prodigy. You get into the tournament of power, and then there's people like the female Saiyans that they ended up fighting had just turned Saiyan, and they're supposed to be on par with them, and they're like knowing how to fight and stuff like that. Like, no, they should be waxing that ass. Like half of the people on there should have just been like, boom, you're done. Like they've been doing this for years. It's the same thing that happened in Star Wars. And I'm not trying to like switch over gears on different shows, but like the fact that people were so mad at this big Star Wars fans that Rey did not know how to use lightsabers at all. And she picked up a lightsaber. It was on par with Kylo Ren. It's the exact same thing. It's just like, that's not a thing. That can't just happen. Broly, it's different because he's a Saiyan legendary Super Saiyan prodigy, which is the only reason why it was like he could come in and like wreck havoc and stuff like that. Like I get Hit and Jail, like they could be different, but like there were so many other times where people that they should have just beat were not beaten, and they were like beating people they shouldn't have or giving them way hard of a time. And not to mention Super Saiyan transformation from Super Saiyan 1 up to 3, and then you had Super Saiyan 4 and GT was the best thing about GT. It flowed. It was perfect. Like that was those were amazing. Like that is one of the coolest transformations, and I will die on that hill to this day.
Yeah,
that GT is the fuck exactly.
Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta was nasty.
Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. That's what I'm talking about. That is the best thing ever. And then they retcon that to give us what Super Saiyan God, like red and then blue. And like it's just like and then it's like, oh, like you're in red.
GT wasn't canon.
No, it wasn't. But it wasn't. But Akira Toriyama definitely helped them and gave them influence and gave them ideas and helped them along the way.
He did not until Super Saiyan 4. He drew Super Saiyan 4.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He gave them references and things like that. Like he was that was enough. But what I'm saying,
my man's cooked up.
Hey, all I'm saying, Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 and the other ones, they got Super Saiyan 4 in it. So you can't say that something's not canon and they using it in video games. They must have liked it enough. I mean, it is not canon. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you could say the same thing about the movies. Like all the movie characters are in the game and they're not canon either.
Hey, we're not jumping on Dragon Ball Z Xenoverse. So you just make your own character and be like, hey, this dude's canon.
But I would disagree in the episodic nature. So
I would disagree with you.
Basically,
no to everything you're saying right now.
So I'll admit that the arcs are very disjointed in Super, but in terms of the episodes follow each other. Those there's always a story at the end. Whereas like I could miss 10 episodes of GT and then catch back in. It was I saw GT, but the last one, I think they had 5 Dragon Balls, and then the first time that it stops being episodic is when they go to the Metal Planet and get the Dragon Ball there. And that's the first time, and that's deep in there. Like
That's what she said.
yes. Not to me, of course, but uh let me see. So up until that point, it was very episodic, and that's where you could skip episodes and come back no problem. It was almost like one of those Nickelodeon shows that they just air, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to like make sure you watch each episode, or else you're completely lost. At least for Super, what we have is within the arc, you have to watch every episode for it to make sense. And that starts at the very beginning. The very first episode, we meet Beerus. And then from there, we continue the relationship. We see how it plays out.
And non-episodic Billy and Mandy, or like things like that that have no thing.
Here, you got it flipped. Episodic is Billy and Mandy. Episodic is the one where it's like it's only, like each episode is standalone.
Are you sure?
Yes,
How sure?
very
Are you positive?
100%.
HIV positive.
HIPAA laws refuse to stop me from.
Okay, I retract everything I said if that is how that works. Because this is like fiction and nonfiction. They always mess me up.
English.
Because they're there for a while. Every planet, they're there for X amount of episodes.
But see, I feel like they don't add to the story, and that's, I guess.
I mean, no, don't get me. But see,
yeah.
But then you're getting into the territory of it being more filler. Not saying that it's not episodic, which I'm not saying that there isn't filler.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say I'll change that argument and just say that Super is a lot less filler then, because I genuinely felt like over about half of GT, I was sitting there like, this feels like filler. I wouldn't watch it.
And that's a fair statement, because GT was very slow. It is another reason why a lot of people have problems with it. I mean, like I said, GT is not perfect by any means, but I mean, as far as the characters go, I feel like some of the characters were also more memorable, which is also why I have GT above Super, in the sense of like you said, Super Saiyan 4, like that's like to me that is way more iconic than Dragon Ball, like Dragon Ball Z, like God, like think about it this way: when we get a Super Saiyan transformation, it like stays, and it's like important, and it's like relevant. Like Goku didn't hit Super Saiyan 2 until like way further on, and then like Super Saiyan 3 didn't come to like a whole nother saga later. It had like time to like marinate and like get readers. Like now it's like, oh, it's the Super Saiyan God, but that doesn't mean anything, because Super Saiyan Blue was like 10 episodes later, and then right after that we're like, well, now we have Super Saiyan Blue 2, which and then it's like, well, now we have Super Ultra Instinct, and it's like, it's just getting kind of wacky. Like people are like, Super Saiyan Ultra Instinct is so amazing, and I'm just like, dude, it's just getting ridiculous. Like I just think like people are like, yeah, they're cool, I guess, to look at and stuff, but it's like, at what point are we just being like, come on, guys? It's like Madden, like we're just like shitting out new ones with a little bit of change every other thing. And I think that like Super Saiyan 4 was just like, no, like we just have this one transformation. It's very iconic. Like think of how less relevant Super Saiyan 4 would have been if we're like, oh, let's add 3-5 more like on later after this. And then the only thing they did was they fused with Super Saiyan 4 with Vegeta to make Super Saiyan 4 SSJ, like Gogeta, like, which is another very iconic character. Omega Shenron, baby, very very iconic characters. They had their own arcs, they had their own things. I mean, like Hit and like Jiren, and also they put everyone together in just one bubble. They were like, There you go. I mean, like Goku Black had his own arc, but again, that's also was just like very generic to me because they're just like, oh, we're just gonna take over Goku's body. It's basically Goku. They were like, hey guys, how can we make another antagonist with doing the least amount of drawing?
So,
We'll do 2 damn Gokus.
So that makes sense. I would say Ultra Instinct actually is, don't hate me for this, is story-wise a better transformation than Super Saiyan 4. From a story perspective, not in terms of personal favorite, it'll always be Super Saiyan 4. But in terms of story building, I would say that because since the first episode of Super, there was hints that of what would be needed to make Ultra Instinct. Your criticism about Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan, yada yada, that all makes sense. I mean, those, I would go so far as to say they're just like merchandise grabs at this point.
Exactly.
But I would say that Super Saiyan 4 was never touched on at all. There was no build up to that transformation. It was literally like, we get this new Super Saiyan Great Ape that has never been mentioned except for that one little cutscene from when they were fighting against Frieza and they thought that's what a Super Saiyan would look like. We never had any mention of that. But with Ultra Instinct, and that's why I think it hit, was because from the first episode, he said, you're thinking too much. You have to let go. That's how you access this greater power, is by just letting your body on auto control run wild. And that's what he did.
Okay, I have two things for that. You said that there was no buildup and they just came there. Well, you can say that for everything. Super Saiyan literally, actually, no. Okay. Okay, wait.
You're telling me Vegeta didn't fucking on his deathbed say like, I'm a Super Saiyan.
I didn't mean Super Saiyan 1. I didn't mean that one.
Literally Super Saiyan 2, we had like, I'm beyond a Super Saiyan.
Okay.
I
didn't mean that one. I didn't mean those. Okay. As I said, my bad. I meant Super Saiyan 3. Super Saiyan 3 just came out of nowhere where he was just like, they're like, oh, by the way, I didn't want to show you Vegeta, but I can turn Super Saiyan 3. And like,
and that was the weakest transformation out of all of them.
It was. And this argument I had for it was very weak as well.
Quickly
as I later remembered that there was a lot of foreshadowing for both the first Super Saiyan 1 and 2. I redact my statement. But my second point, which is actually my second point, though, Super Saiyan Ultra is such a cop out in the sense of that you make a every Super Saiyan before that thing you still had to fight, you still had to like be good. Now you have one where it's like, yeah, you just kind of just dodge everything, you kind of just automatically win. It's like you have Super Ultra Instinct, so it's like, don't worry, you're just like this. It's like a cheat code, and that's what I don't like about it. Also, and then they made it to be this like I understand something being strong, but now you've gone into like OP like Saitama territory.
See, I can understand that, but that's also one of the areas that the multiple transformations do sort of ruin Super. But
it does. If they had just had Super Ultra Instinct and not the God and the blues and all that other stuff, I would have been like, that's dope. Also, I feel like the hair thing, I don't know, maybe this is nitpicking, but the hair thing to me was really annoying. Like, I'm like, the whole thing about the transformation thing, like when Goku turns Super Saiyan God, like his hair doesn't change. He just looks like he's in his Kaioken form, but like slightly more. So it's like that, like all that to me was like, when I first saw it, I was like, he's just in Kaioken, his hair is still red, nothing's the same. He just looks slimmer because of the animation. Like, it's like that to me, I just thought was really dumb. And then Blue was like, okay, this is kind of interesting because, they at least they changed the color. I mean, it's different. And then you go back to like, how do you go from red to blue to back to black being like, but like with like that silver sheen, like it's just like the color schemes also just kind of like annoyed me as well. I was just like at this point, like that doesn't even feel like they're trying.
Didn't Goku's hair turn black when he went Super Saiyan 4?
I mean,
So
yes, but it was different. It was black, but it wasn't the same. His hairstyle is different.
yeah, that's fair.
His hairstyle is completely different. His hairstyle for both God and then how do you have regular hair and then you change to God and your hair's the same. Then you change the super to it goes blue and spiky. Then you change to the ultra and then it goes back to the original. Like yes, it was black, but his hairstyle, him and Vegeta, it's like it's a mixture of like Super Saiyan 3, but it's not as long, but then it's also black. Like that, the illustration for it, I just feel like was better. Because they only had one to make. They're like, hey guys, we're gonna focus our time. We're gonna make a new Super Saiyan. So then we're gonna put all the people on this and to make this one thing. Versus the other ones, you're trying. It's like Pokemon. Like, at what point does the Pokemon start getting really crappy because they're just trying to shoot out as many as they can? They're like, dude, we have like 300 more of these to make, dude. Just make them a fucking ice cream cone. Who cares? Make that one garbage. Like, they'll buy it. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's the same thing as like when you have way more things to do on a project, you do shortcuts. Let's make it easier. Like, we don't. A lot of Super to me was also just felt like a cop out. Like, it wasn't Dragon Ball Z fan service.
That's fair. That's fair. It really is.
I really think that, like, you know, people really want to see this. Like, they're people love Dragon Ball Z. They want more Dragon Ball Z. We're gonna give them Dragon Ball Z, and we just if it turns out bad, it doesn't matter because you know they're still gonna watch it. Like, I feel like that's what happened. You could also maybe make the same argument for GT because they were like, you know, people were like, oh, like the Dragon Ball Z was over, and then fans really wanted it. And they wanted to see it. They're like, yeah, but I feel like even though wasn't done by Akira Toriyama, like the people that did it, their hearts into it as well. So it was more like, we're gonna do this for the fans. We're gonna give them fan service.
But let's answer what's at the root of this. Is it better to ask for something and receive it, like in Super, or get something you didn't even ask for in GT? Like, nobody was asking for that shit. Nobody was sitting there like, damn, I wish Goku could be a kid again. That would
again. I'm not saying they made the right decisions. I would have made GT. The small things I would have changed is Goku is not a kid, and I would have given him a better ensemble than the Trunks that we got there. I feel like growing up Gotenks would have been a way better one than Trunks if they didn't make him as badass as they could have. But if you would have just changed a couple things around with the people they made and not having Goku, I feel like GT would have never gotten as much backlash as it has.
That's fair. And in response to that, if I could change Super, I would have made it
better in every other aspect and watchable.
Absolutely interesting. Good characters. Great.
I would have brought Launch back.
R.I.P. the Launch. I definitely would have made more serious villains. I think that there were many storytelling devices that they used that were awful, particularly with Jiren. Jiren is an awful character from a storytelling perspective because they do what they tell you not to do in terms of storytelling. It's a tell, don't show. And so the whole time, up until the actual Jiren starts fighting, all we get is like people talking about how strong he is. We never get to see it. And so just having people describe it like that just really was a missed opportunity. I mean, I'm not saying he had to fight literally everybody on the map, but, you know, just maybe just like a quick show, you know, things like that.
Like I said, there's like no substance. Like Frieza had his whole arc to shine. You know, Cell, like they're these villains that we build up and stuff. Like Jiren, I feel like in like hitting the other one, they could have been like such big name things, but they're just like, hey, let's just make a bunch of random strong people, say they're from other universes, and have them all fight. Like, I think the tournament was a great idea. I think that like makes a lot of sense in that one. But the reason the tournaments were always so great was because we knew who was battling. Like when the first tournaments came, like we knew we followed Krillin, we followed Goku, we knew about Piccolo, like when he was there and that he was gonna fight. We knew about like, Master Roshi, and then he like went into the other ones. I mean, like I feel like the tournaments were like one of the best things about Dragon Ball. Like people that love that was like the mainstay. But again, you knew who was fighting, like you knew about Tien, you saw all the stuff he did, and then you were like, oh man, like I can't wait to see them and like who's gonna fight. Like so when you make a bunch of people that you have no like stock in, and then you're just like, hey, this guy's really strong, and then you just have him fight, you're like, well, I don't really know, like what's going on with that. It's kind of the same thing. Like for instance, like when Goku was in the other world and he had that other tournament and he was fighting all those other people, it really didn't hit home either because they were like, well, I don't know any of these people. It's just like he's just fighting to fight. And then like he obviously fought Pycon or whatever. Yeah. But see, like if they put Pycon right now and they brought him and had him in a tournament, you like, oh, I saw him from that other thing. He had to be cool in a tournament type thing. You know what I mean? Like
so this will be my final point on this. That's another thing that's actually missing in GT. There's no tournament arc, and you can make the argument we don't know the characters well enough, but tournaments have been like a reoccurring thing through all of Shonen and Dragon Ball Z in particular.
Well, I mean, they weren't really in Dragon Ball Z because the only tournament that they did in the Buu Saga, but they didn't even finish it.
Android Saga.
Okay.
That was also a tournament.
You're okay. Fair. Different type of tournament, but I'm thinking the actual. But you're right. And
so I would say that tournaments are kind of the bread and butter of Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super. But I would also say that we have evidence, even characters that we're not hyper familiar with do make good tournament contestants. So, for example, we didn't know Ten Shinhan very well back in Dragon Ball, but we still found him an interesting character for Goku to fight when he was younger. I would say if Jiren had been done better, if Hit had been done better, we probably would be talking about them the same way. And so I seriously think that granted, I'll always admit that the characters could be written a lot better, but I would say that a tournament arc with characters that we're not hyper familiar with is better than no tournament at all. And with that, it's gotta stick by Super.
So that's gonna do it for today's debate, guys. We really hope you enjoyed watching. Maybe we made you laugh. Maybe we brought up some good points. Maybe we didn't. Let us know who you think won and what you think the better series is, GT or Super. Peace, guys.